In this lecture, I want to show you how you can parameterize the get data from a selected file. Here is the entire context. We have a folder path and we have the file name. The folder has three different files in it, says for 2013, 14 and 15. What I want is for the user to change the name here, and then whenever they change the name, the data that is shown on the sheet will automatically pick the data from a different file. This means that you don't have to go to Power Query over and over again. And this is how you can create a parameter. I've already created a table called parameters where we have the folder path and any initial file name. The process to do this would be a little different, so please pay attention. The first thing that I do is to click on data, get data, and we want to create a blank query. Let's call the query name as f parameters because we want to create a function of our own. Now we click on advanced editor in the home tab. And this is what you will need to write. So we haven't used the advanced editor so far. It is called the advanced editor because only advanced users need to work with it. But that's all right. We can do this one example. Let's remove everything that was already there. I will say that let the parameter be equal to. So I need two different arguments here. We have the table name and then we have the row number. And then we have an arrow like this. Then we use another let. And we say that the source should be equal to my current Excel workbook. So this would be Excel current workbook. Open and close a parentheses. After this, you want to open a curly brace. And in this, you want to write, within the curly brace, you want to write, the name is equal to the table name. And after this, you want to write content. Go to the next line. The value would be equal to, again, the source. And then in curly brace, you want to write the row number minus 1. And then again, you have the value. So just think about what is happening here. In our Excel file, we have created a parameter and a value, right? Now this means that in the advanced editor, there are two different things that we are picking. We are picking the folder name and the path as well, which means that now I can close this advanced editor window. I can say that in the result would be my value. And then finally we say in parameter. Okay, so that closes our complete function. And let's just quickly make sure that everything is working properly. So we need to have a comma after this line. That is how you close a single line of code in Power Query. Okay, now we have chosen a -1 because the index number schema of Power Query starts at 0, and that's why you're choosing a -1 here. You press done. Now the table name, remember we have already named our table as parameters. So now we can close and load, and then close and load once again. Now remember, because this was a function, it did not get loaded as a sheet. It only got loaded as a connection that you can see on the right side. Once we have done this, we can now connect Power Query to that Excel file. The first time we will do it manually, and then we will create a parameter. So the first time I will select get data from file from workbook. Let's choose our correct folder path. And like I said, we just want to choose the first one, Superstore Sales 2013. So we're not really interested in making any change to the dataset. I can simply load it. And the moment you load that Excel file, in its current form, the file gets loaded like this. So we have about 1900 rows. I want to select it, cut it, and then bring it back to the same sheet. Okay, let me do it like this. And we also want to, okay, I think that works. Now here's my requirement. I want that when the user chooses, if it's okay with you, I'll just quickly format it properly, and we don't need the heading. So I just shift the heading to the right, and so that we can see our data set like this. Perfect. Now my requirement is that the user should be able to change this to 2014. And when that change happens, automatically the data set that you see here should be picked for the 2014 sales file. Let's right click, click on table, and then edit query. Now what we want to do here is to modify the query that we already have with us. Now remember, this query is hard coded to a folder path and to a file name, and we don't like that because we want that to be dynamic. So we click on advanced editor, and if you notice, it is automatically hard coded to this folder path that you see here and to this file name, which is superstore sales 2013.xlsx. What we want to do here is to simply select this entire thing and delete it. And we can now write f parameters. That's the custom function that we created. And we want the folder name and the file name. The folder name would be parameters, comma 1, because the folder name was written in the first row. And on this, we want to concatenate a slash, because there would be a slash between the folder path and the file name. And then we choose f parameters once again. And in this, we want to choose, let's put a concatenate here as well. We want to choose f parameters, and this would be again parameters, comma 2, because the second row is where the file name was written. Wonderful. So it says that no syntax errors have been detected. Let's see if it works or not. Now you notice that there was no change in our query. Okay, there is a bit of a problem. It says we couldn't find an Excel table named parameters. Not a problem. Let me close and load it. And we will quickly go back and double check whether our table has been named properly or not. Okay, I think the casing also has to be correct. So I want to call it parameters like this. And let's go back and refresh it. Okay, so I think the spelling here also has to be the value, and we click on refresh and it seems to be working. Okay, so let's see if it works or not. When I change 2013 to 14 and you refresh, do you see now the data is being picked up for 2014? When I go back and change it to 2015, right click and refresh, it becomes 2015. This is a very, very smart way and a very fast way of making sure that you're selecting the data from the file that you want. So the user can simply create a drop down. You can choose the file that you want. And from that same folder, you can look at the data set from a different file. So let's do a quick recap. The first thing I did was to create a table called parameters. Now, please remember, you have to be very careful of the cases. Like I also made a small mistake. I kept it as uppercase, but then I did not write an uppercase in my query. So you have to make sure that the case is matching. Please remember that the first two columns are there just for our reference. We don't actually need it. So even if we delete it, everything will work perfectly. The entire query is being referred to only to the third column, which is value. Now remember, this is 1 and this is 2. The reason we are choosing the first and the second row is because the first row has the folder name and the second one has the file name. So a quick recap of the steps. I went to data, get data. We selected other sources and then a blank query. The blank query that I created looked like this. So let me go back to Power Query editor. Okay, as you can see, we created a function like this. And if I go to advanced editor, you can see that this is what we had to write. All right. So we said that our parameter will have two elements in it. The first one is where the user chooses the table name and then the row number. The source would be my current Excel workbook and the name is the table name, which is parameters. And then I'm choosing a value from the value column. Remember, this is just the name that I gave to the third column. This could be any other name that you want to give. This is a standardized function. So like I said earlier, you don't have to worry too much about it. If you want to copy and paste it in other workbooks, you can always do that. It would work without any problems whatsoever. Once we had done this, then we ran the query for the Superstore sales data 2013. And the first time, if you remember, we did it manually. But then we went and made these dynamic. So if you look at this part, the f parameters, comma 1 and parameters, comma 2, which is the folder name and the file name are being picked up dynamically. So that completes our example. It's a very, very important example. So please make sure that you do this yourself. First, write a blank query with the custom function. After that, you have to run a query with the first file. And then whenever you change the file name, the user will be able to see different results by simply right click and refresh.